Hi, have you been wondering how to use modern tech to boost your business profit? Or you're passionate about tech and eager to dive into opportunities like remote jobs and professional networking? You're in the right place. My name is Samuel Achato Bashir, the founder and CEO of Dixre and a seasoned senior software engineer. If you are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Hi, welcome to our first virtual podcast. On this episode of our virtual podcast, we'll be having Franklin as our guest. Franklin is a software engineer whom I've known for over 8 years. He's one of the most exciting guys I've worked with. He has passion for tech and he has built a lot of great products. Franklin has worked with top companies like Andela and is currently based in the Netherlands. Franklin has a lot of passion for artificial intelligence, also known as AI. Because of his passion for AI, he has been able to build a startup which he named Proteus AI. And the product is actually making waves, which I believe will make a lot of impact in the long run. In this episode, we'll be talking a lot about what it takes to kickstart a career in AI, what are some of the learning curves, and how Franklin has been able to maximize the potentials in AI to build his product. I believe you'll learn a lot on this episode. If you have thoughts, questions, or any opinion you would like to share, please feel free to share it on the comment section. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up. Hi, welcome to our podcast, Franklin. It's a privilege to have you on board, and thanks for honoring my invitation to be part of this episode of our podcast.
No, it's fine. I'm honored to be here. Is this
Yeah,
this is a regular podcast, right?
yeah, sure.
Nice. How is it possible maybe to hear a little bit about the podcast, maybe just as an icebreaker?
Oh, okay. Well, Dixre podcast started about 2 months ago when we relocated to a new workspace. One of our motivation was to come up with a platform where people will get to discover a lot about opportunities in tech and how they can explore them. And one of the ways we felt we could achieve this is to reach out to people that have experience or lots of experience in the tech industry, talk about to get them to talk about their experiences, share their projects, ideas, what they've been working on, their career paths, basically. Yeah. And we believe that our viewers or our target audience will get to learn a lot from the stories of others. And that's what inspired the Dixre podcast. Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Congrats on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, sure. So, without further ado, I would like to have you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your startup, the Proteus AI.
All right, thank you. My name is Franklin Chieze, Chieze, software engineer. I started software out of curiosity. I used to be very interested in maths, especially back in secondary school and uni. And I used to come up with like some interesting maths formula, like, hey, if you give me the date, I could calculate whether it was on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and it's accounted for leap years and stuff like that. I mean, nothing interesting, per se, but I just liked doing things like that. But some of those calculations could be a little bit uh, quite tasking, and I wanted easy way to perform those calculations. And um, I didn't know much about programming, but I had an idea about it. I knew that you could use it to automate stuff. So I reached out to a friend to say, hey, come teach me this programming stuff. And it so happened that, or it just happened that he was also looking for people to teach programming because he wanted to like start a software team, something like that. Right. So, I was happy to join, and that was where the journey started. I fell in love with it. It just seemed like magic to be able to type something in some sort of notepad and then watch it perform something on your computer or on some other device. So I haven't looked back since then. Then let me see. And then part of that journey brought me back to Kaduna, where my family, my parents still stay anyway, which is where we met, right?
Yeah,
So
sure, sure.
just giving the listeners a little bit of historical context.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but after that, went to Abuja to work for a software company, then went to Lagos to work for a pretty popular software company, Andela. Um, so I think bringing it back to Proteus AI, it started no, not last year, I think 2020. So I was working on a side project for this team. They wanted to build like a service to help lending companies get real-time access to borrowers' data. And I was quite busy. Then I wanted to work on the project, but I was quite busy. I didn't want to spend a lot of time writing code. I was working on the back end. So I thought I'll just automate the whole stuff, which I did. The tool is still on GitHub. It's called GraphStrap. So like GraphQL Bootstrap. So basically, you just define your models as a TypeScript file. Like, hey, I have a cat. The cat has a name, an age, a height, blah, blah, blah. And then you run the script and then it generates like all the things you need. It generates like all your GraphQL resolvers, all your for the mutations, for the queries, for the subscriptions, both the GraphQL definition and the TypeScript resolvers themselves and everything. It was really cool because, anytime I needed to make a change, I just go to one of those files, maybe add a new field or remove an existing field, run the script, and then it gives me the code again. So I liked that project and I started thinking about how to generalize it instead of just for GraphQL, but could I do this for REST API? What about for UI? It would be good to auto generate UI based on some models. If somebody says they have a model called carts, then maybe I should be able to generate a UI where you can create a new cart, view existing carts, delete carts, those kind of things. But I didn't want to write a lot of codes for different languages or different technologies. But then something happened this year, right? There was this, well, starting from, I think, ending of last year, there was this like AI revolution where, especially OpenAI, they made public GPT, and then their Chat GPT app, which kind of just took the development world by storm. And people started creating like crazy things, right? Unbelievable things, right? So I was like, this could actually help me in auto generating because, we could see that it was generating code. So why don't I just tell it, hey, I have a model called Cat. Can you generate like a Next.js UI that will allow me view existing cards, create a new card, blah, 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 and have it to do something like that. So I actually started working on that project. And then when it got to the point of integrating the AI itself, I decided to take a pause on that project to go read properly the OpenAI API documentation that it had, of course, become public by then. And then in the process of reading, I found out that, we could actually do something cool here. They had this concept of embeddings, which I know we're going to talk about later. But you just, okay, with embeddings, I can provide it custom data and it will be able to like maybe answer questions based on those custom data. And I started thinking, what if I created like this thin wrapper around this stuff and made it available to like some companies so that they could feed it with their custom data and have something like a customer service chatbot. And that was how like the whole Proteus AI idea started. Obviously, it has been going through some evolutions since then, but I think this is a good, shall I say, mini history of this. Yeah.
That's quite interesting, and I believe the project will go far. At least I know that you've been passionate about AI for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out. Yeah.
Me
So
too.
one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I mean, with the way the world is rapidly adopting AI, like what kind of skills do you think people need to, adopt or learn to future-proof their careers?
Okay, let me start maybe from going back a little bit and just introduce AI at a very high level, no details or anything like that, just to give people an idea. This AI, what are we talking about? Because, it's a very broad field, and sometimes as someone from the outside, and I can still relate to that feeling because, I definitely don't consider myself an expert. I'm still like someone from the outside looking at it. It's can be daunting to even know like where to look or what to start. So I'm trying to find a definition. I think we can refer AI as the development of like computer systems or software that can perform tasks that typically require some sort of human intelligence, right? So this is as against typical kind of computer systems or software where they are very fixed in how they perform things. The programmer has to basically direct all their steps. Hey, do this, do this, do this. Then if this is this, do this. But with AI, we're trying to create systems that mimic human intelligence. Whether they're intelligent or not is another conversation, but at least they appear to be, and that's the cool thing. So they do some important things, right, that we associate with intelligence. So they learn, which means they get better over time at doing something, especially the more you provide them with data or with feedback, right? They appear to reason or have some sort of, what do we call it, logic. They can appear to understand like natural human languages. So you no longer have to give computer instruction in a very fixed form, like clicking a button or typing a query in a particular syntax. Now you can like use free-form human language to give it instruction. So that's cool. In terms of type, forgive my categorization here, but let me just use the word type. There are generally two broad types, right? There's the narrow AI, which you can also refer to as weak AI. And then there's the general AI, which you can refer to as the strong AI, right? So the narrow AI is AI that does something specific, and it's very good at doing that stuff. So for instance, vision, like, computer vision, AI that has been trained to identify some sort of images, right? Maybe trained to identify dogs from videos or from pictures or something like that, right? And they are typically very good at doing that stuff, but that's all they can do. By the way, you can also trick them to get their judgment wrong, but they do try their best. Then there's the general AI, which is like the holy grail of AI, right? Which is where we are approaching. It's AI that should be able to perform like a broad range of activities, like a human being. There's really no one human being who can say, oh, I know how to do only one thing and one thing only. Humans are very adaptable, very flexible. So we're trying to build these systems that can do stuff like that. And, just a little bit on that. Part of how we are approaching it right now, and I'm sure in the future there'll be another approach, but the current approach right now seems to be to use these things called agents. Agents are like systems that can, quote and unquote, prompt themselves, right? But those agents don't actually perform the specific tasks themselves. They take advantage of narrow AI. So you have like very specific AI that can do this, like different AIs. Then you have an agent that when you give it a complex task, it now decide, okay, to perform this complex task, I'm going to have to do this, do this, do this. Now to do this, I can't do this on my own or by myself. So I'm going to call this AI that is specific to this, and then after it has done this, I'm going to call this AI, and then it now appears to have like general intelligence. But actual general intelligence, we're probably still quite a distance from it. All right. Then in terms of branches of AI, there are some popular branches that we may have heard of, things like machine learning, right? Things like computer vision. So machine learning is like the development of like statistical models or even algorithms that have the ability to improve their performance on a particular task with time, the more they get trained or the more they have access to knowledge. Then you have computer vision, you have robotics, you have natural language processing, which is probably what we'll talk a little bit more on, because that is the area where Proteus AI operates. You have genetic algorithm, which is quite interesting. You have neural networks and a few others. So the reason why I feel it's important to list this is so that someone like me who's looking at AI from an external perspective can begin to have an idea. Oh, okay, we have like these various branches, right? And then maybe you can begin to decide what branch appeals to you personally, so that you can start by putting in efforts in that area. And then if you've learned that area, you can expand to other areas, right? But just knowing that, okay, these are the branches helps. Then my current focus is on LLMs, large language models. They are like a subset of natural language processing, but they also have aspects of machine learning in them. So basically, these are, how would I describe them? They are models that are able to detect patterns in a large body of text, so that they can do things like text generation. They're able to generate text, or they can appear to understand texts, and they can, do some other things like even translation from one language to another. I think, let me see what else. So a popular example of these LLMs would be the GPT series from OpenAI, right? So GPT, generative pre-trained transformers. You can just go to Google for more details into this, but they're able to generate text. They have been pre-trained on a large body of text, and their transformers. Obviously, we'll not go into details about what transformers are, but I'm trying to remember. Attention is all you need. So if you're interested in transformers with regards to large language model, just Google "attention is all you need," and then you'll see it's like a white paper written by some smart people, and then maybe you can dive into it and see what transformers are. So having given like that brief, should I say, overview of AI, the types, the branches, and where Proteus falls under. To the question itself, what are a few things that people can do to take advantage of AI? There are quite a number of things, but I think two that I like to point out would be data literacy and programming, right? So if you're already in the tech field, for instance, if you already program, you already have like a very solid foundation to go into AI. There are some languages that are typically associated with it, like Python or R or Julia. So you could either pick up those languages, or, quite frankly, a lot of languages these days are, can be used to do AI stuff, but those are like the typical ones. So if you are in the programming world, you already have like a very strong foundation to dive into AI. If you are not in the programming world, a good place to start could be data literacy. So by data literacy, I'm talking about the ability to understand and interpret data, the ability to get insight from data and to communicate it. So why do I feel like this is a good place? Well, because for most people that are not going to be like that are not seeking to be expert AI, I don't know, engineers who just want to, who are just curious as to how to apply AI in their field, or how to take advantage of it. What I would say is, what you'll probably be doing most of the time when you're using AI is data analysis on steroids, right? So maybe you should start by knowing a little bit of data analysis, right? So for instance, if you're a small business and you're thinking about utilizing AI to make sense of your finances or whatever, right? You can start by actually seeing how to do it without AI, right? So it involves things like data collection. How do I collect data, financial data, so that I have like the data itself? How do I glean insight from the data so that I have information? How do I apply context to the information so that I have knowledge? And how do I apply that knowledge to my business so that I have wisdom? This is like a pyramid. The data pyramid, DIKW, data, information, knowledge, wisdom, right? That kind of thing. So, when you get to that point where, or if you're already at that point where you're already doing these data literate things to better improve your decision making or the way you run your business, then you have at a very good point to begin to integrate AI into your businesses. Why? Because you know exactly where to integrate it into, right? So you are not just asking random questions like, hey, I have a close selling business. How can AI improve it? You have something in mind that, okay, this is the specific area of my business that I want to improve. I already do these things manually, but I want to do it in a more fine-tuned way with more nuanced data, a lot faster, a lot more efficient than I do it, those kind of things. Then that becomes a good place that you can take advantage of AI. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks a lot for that detailed insight on, diving into AI. One of the things I've been curious about is with some of the topics that are trending today about AI taking people's job and, people having different kind of opinions about this. How do you see AI? What kind of effect do you think AI will have on people's jobs? And what do you think employees should do about it?
Mm. And I think this also follows from the previous question. So, for instance, regardless of, okay, I'll answer this in two ways.
Okay.
Skill and attitude, right? So, in terms of skill, I already touched some of the things in the previous questions. Maybe try to be data literate, or maybe to try to level up on programming. But I think the most important thing actually is the attitudes or the behavior that the person has. For you to be able to take advantage of AI, or for you to be able to adapt to this new AI world, you need to have, I don't want to sound too cliche, but you need to have growth mindsets, So you need to have that mindset where, there are some people that will always act against progress. Like if something new comes, their first instinct is, how can I oppose this? How can I fight against this? Or hoping that this is just a fad that will fade away after 5 minutes or something like that. And sometimes you can't blame them. We've had fads, especially from the tech world, that they seem to be the new thing in the world. It's going to change the world. It's going to revolutionize everything, and then it just disappears after a while, or it is shown to be a scam. I don't think AI is a scam. I think it's here to stay for real, right? And there are a few reasons why I think it's here to stay for real. And one of the reasons why I feel it's here to stay is, well, number one, the companies that are supporting it. If you compare it to other like trends, even if you want to go to things like crypto, which I know is a touchy topic, and some other trends, like the last one about what was it called? I can't remember. About images, people could buy certain things about images. I can't remember what it's called now. So when you compare companies that backed those kind of trends to companies that are backing AI, you know that, okay, maybe this AI stuff is actually here to stay. That's number one. Number two is the practicality of the technology to normal people. AI is really very practical. It's no longer at that level of, oh, this is beyond our reach. This is only for the scholars in the best universities or stuff like that. Normal businesses, people that are printing things, people that are selling things, are now integrating AI into their services. And that is one of the things you look at and you know that, okay, this stuff is real. So having established that this stuff is real, the only choice you have is really to adapt to it, right? And some of the so your question is in two parts, like, how is AI going to transform businesses, and what can people do to adapt? So I think I've spoken about to adapt. Like, you need to have like that growth mindset. You need to be open to it, and you need to. So one of the things you can do, for instance, when I started learning about everything that was happening in ChatGPT, one of the things that became very clear to me was that some of the code I'm writing now this stuff is already writing it. So I could have acted in fear, be in denial or some sort of thing like that. But what I did was, okay, I'm going to jump on this thing. I'm going to see what I can learn about it, because I know that how new technologies work is that the technologies themselves don't replace people. It is people who learn those new technologies that replace people. So if somebody is going to replace me as a programmer, let it be me with that skill. So that was really what started my curiosity in it. If something is going to replace me, if they say, oh, programmers are going to be obscure because of this tool, then I better go learn that too, so that I still have relevance in the world to come. Right. So that's the mindset to have. Now, in terms of how it would transform like businesses or careers, we're already seeing some of it. So, for instance, one of the cool things about AI is that they automate routine tasks. So that sounds like a very small thing to say, but it's really important. So a lot of the tasks that we perform on a daily basis, they usually have two parts, right? At least in some industries, maybe not in every industry. There is the routine part, and then there's the creative part, right? And a lot of times when you are choosing that career path, it's actually the creative part that interests you. So when you're thinking about, when you're dreaming about, oh, I want to be a software developer when I grow, it is doing those creative things. It's not, I have to create get endpoints, post endpoints, delete. Those are routine things. They are boring. They are very predictable. Why do I have to do them every time? Right? Those are not the things you actually want to do. The things you want to do are the very interesting problems that are unique, that hardly come up more than once, right? And they involve like a high degree of human intelligence. So what you want to do is let the AI handle those routine parts, and then you can handle the creative parts, and you derive joy from it. I do it like in my own career. I use GitHub Copilot.
Yeah.
And what I do is, now it's almost like I'm coding with some other coding body. But my job is the interesting one, because my job is thinking about the algorithm. How are we going to solve this problem? And then their job is writing the specific code. So I think about the algorithm, and then if you've used GitHub Copilot, you know that if you write a code and you enter, it can generate the code matching the comments. So I just write my algorithm in comments. Okay, do this, do this, do this. If this is this, do this, do this. And then I begin to press enter, and then just sit back and watch as it's generating like code. And then if you have to make some changes, you make a few changes. But I just love this process. It has made me a lot more productive and efficient, which is another way AI is going to transform our careers or our jobs. So think about it. People using AI are now producing like beats. They are producing songs. They are creating works of arts, right? Obviously, there's always going to be that conversation as to, is this human creation? There are people that would see AI generated art and be like, this is not real art. But I would like to remind us something. I read this somewhere, and I think I agree with the sentiment of the reader. The writer said, if we go back many years before, there was a time when people were also questioning people using tools like Photoshop to say the art you're producing, is it real art? You are using a tool like this, and if we go back time, before then, we'll probably find a time where people using maybe some kind of painting tools, or okay, maybe all those spray, or people that do graffiti. Somebody was probably questioning them, because you're not using brush and doing it manually, is it real art? So there's always that constant question of, is it real art? But over time, they get accepted as real art, because there is still that human input. Somebody still has to control the graffiti, the paint can to produce the graffiti. Somebody still has to click and do things on Photoshop to produce the art. And likewise, somebody still has to, quote unquote, write the prompts or something, to produce the AI generated image. And, you could either be there asking, oh, is this real art? Or you could be on this other side using it to produce real stuff, right? So it's going to make a lot of work more efficient. It's going to make a lot of people more productive. What's another thing that it's going to do? Enhanced decision making. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier when I was talking about data literacy, because the whole essence of data literacy is to improve your decision making, to give you data that you can base decisions on, right? So when you now inculcate AI into that, with its ability to consume nuanced data, unlabeled data, unstructured data, data that with your human eye, you may not be able to see a pattern, right? And it's able to pick a pattern, and it's able to make predictions based on this very rough, dirty, unstructured data that you have. Then that just gives you like a more enhanced decision-making capability, right? So I think that's also something important that it's going to do. It's also going to help businesses scale. And I'll give you like a practical example. In my day job here, I work with a company called Lepaya. And what we do is we produce training materials, right? So I work in the tech team, so we have like an app. But even with the app, you still need a human trainer. Some training sessions happen like in person. So the app helps you with, okay, you can see all your curriculum, but you still need like a human trainer to perform some of those trainings. So maybe it is public speaking, for instance. So you need a human trainer that would be with you and would be able to give you feedback on maybe how you are performing in your public speaking, your eye contact, your gesture, how you are using your hands, and things like that. But recently, we built an AI program, like a curriculum, but based on AI, without no human trainer that can do the same thing. So you basically just record yourself giving a public speech, and then you send the video to it, and then using AI, it analyzes the video and it gives you feedback. Oh, you didn't move your hands enough. Oh, you didn't look at the camera when you were speaking. You used a lot of filler words like or that kind of thing. And now you can practice at your own time in the midnight. You don't need to wake a trainer up or something. And now the company can reach more people because you no longer need to say, oh, okay, if I'm going to train 1,000 people, I need 100 trainers, because you have the AI tool. So just give it to them and then they use it. So it's going to help a lot of businesses scale also. And then I think just many, many more things that we can't envision. Even the way society works, I believe is going to change like drastically. So looking forward to all the changes with excitement.
Well, I think you really shared a lot. I mean, I kind of saw how AI is actually helping businesses in a different way with some of the scenarios you've shared, especially how you are applying it in your company. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I was curious to know is like if you've met someone or have kind of a success story you'd like to share about maybe an individual that had adopted AI skills in their career and how it has really helped them.
Yeah. There are a lot of success stories actually. If we are starting a line, so okay, so for instance, maybe a good place to start would be some of our listeners may be aware of the fact that OpenAI has an event recently, right? And in the event, in the beginning part of the event, they shared some of the ways their products have been able to help normal people, right? One of the stories that caught my attention, which I would like to also quickly share here as the first case, is the story of this artist that had he had limited mobility on his left-hand side. He had to undergo like this brain surgery. I can't remember what happened to him. But he's an artist who should be able to use both hands in producing his arts, his beats, his song, his whatever he's producing. But he can't do that, right, because of his limited mobility. But because of AI, he's able to interact with his tool using voice commands, right? And he doesn't have to structure his speech in a particular pattern for the machine to understand what he's saying. He just speaks as if he's speaking with a normal human being. using AI, the intent, that is what he's trying to do, is derived from his, whatever he has spoken. And then that is translated into some actual actions that now help him produce the art that he wants to produce. So what should have been a limitation before now doesn't even matter, because he can just speak with his voice and AI takes over and then does what he wants to do. I think that was really cool to see that particular use case. And the other interesting use cases, right? Another use case, talking about how you can use this in your career is, personally, right? This GitHub Copilot, which I referred to earlier, is probably one of my best investments ever. I don't really have the habit of paying for things, if I'm being honest, right? But this is one of those things that I'm happy to pay for, right? Because it just changes how you work. It's almost like you have a programming body, and you are tasked with the more interesting parts, the creative parts, and they are tasked with the mundane parts. And you no longer have to remember everything. You no longer have to remember the syntax of, oh, how do I do this or this or this? Just write the comments, and then it generates the code for you, right? And then if you have to make a few changes, you make a few changes. And it has just transformed. To give, like, I could give like 1,000 examples of how this has helped me, but one of the favorite example I like to give is, there's a project I was working on, and it's required me to modify the code editor that comes with VS Code. So if you don't know, you can actually use that code editor in your own app, because there is, especially if it's a JavaScript app, a JavaScript TypeScript app, there's it's called Monaco. It's available on NPM, for instance. So you can install it into your app, the Monaco editor, and you have the code editor in VS Code in your application. So I needed to have the code editor in my application, and I needed it for a custom language that it doesn't support out of the box. But I didn't know how to do that. And before now, I would have probably had to spend significant amounts of time going online, finding how do you make code edit, Monaco editor to support custom language, and then you now start reading documentation after documentation after documentation. But what I did was, I just wrote the comments. I think in the comments I also included like a sample syntax of the language, some instruction for highlighting, right? And I pressed enter. And then I just sat back as the code was just being generated. The way it works in VS Code is, generates a portion of code. You have to press like enter or another key. It generates. So I'll just hitting. So just generating. At the end of the day, I ran the code and it worked. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd never used Monaco in that very customized way before. But because of Copilot, I was able to do it in a matter of minutes, what would have probably taken hours. So, for me, that's like a big success story. So much so that in our company now, in Lepaya, there is now a company provided subscription, because they've recognized how important it is. So if you're using Copilot, just reach out to the company. They give you a subscription. You don't have to pay for it yourself, because everybody is beginning to recognize it's not perfect. It still has some flaws, but it's transforming gradually how developers work. Then another success story will be the one I shared earlier at Lepaya, how we now have AI that can give feedback to people. Maybe you record yourself practicing your public speaking, it gives you feedback. Or the last demo that they did at the company, it was for communication, like communication style, right? So you record yourself communicating in these simulated environments. They give you like a use case. You record yourself communicating, and then it's able to tell you things like, you sounded maybe a bit instead of focusing on, instead of trying to judge the person you're communicating on, try to focus on specific behaviors that they exhibited and how those behaviors affected. The useful feedback that you would have gotten, you would have required a trainer to be present to get, now you can get them in the middle of the night or anywhere you find yourself without any human interaction, without that particular limitation. So that's also a success story I like to point. And then bringing it to Proteus AI. So we are currently speaking with like a number of people because we are going back and forth to them, brainstorming to see how they can use AI to enhance the value that they are giving their customers. You know, Proteus is really a B2B business model. So we are speaking with businesses more. And one of the businesses we are speaking with is this marketing firm that handles marketing for a lot of companies, including big clients like MTN, right? And one of the things they want to do is to be able to provide AI capabilities to some of their clients. AI capability like a customer service chat widgets. You know, like when you land on a website, you see the button, typically at the bottom right corner, you click it and you begin to chat. Some of the clients have been asking for that. Before us, they were budgeting this ridiculous amount of money, this long amount of time. Oh, we have to go and find like AI engineers, all these things, all these constraints. It was like a big investment, right? And then they met with us. And then I did like a very small demo for them. I went to their website, to the About Us page of their website, just copied content from there, trained the AI with that, and then started interacting with the AI right in front of them. And they were like, this changes everything. This changes everything. How much is it? Our pricing model is very fair. Yeah, you can go from the lowest range from like 10 euros per month to the enterprise range of like 100 euros per month. This is something that they were anticipating would be millions of, naira or whatever, right? And not units millions, so not like 1 million or 2 million, like more digits. And all of a sudden, they are seeing it being done here in minutes without writing a line of code, without you being an expert in programming or in AI, and without having to spend significant amounts of money. So, now they are thinking of how they want to use it to serve their various customers. And we're going to hear more like success stories of AI as more people begin to integrate this into their products and their services.
Nice, interesting. I mean, this is a huge progress for you and your startup. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, one of the things I was curious again to ask is, you have a rich background in GraphQL, Prisma, and other related technologies. Like, how do can you kind of give us an idea of how you synergize these technologies to build AI-related products like the Proteus AI you have?
Yeah. So in terms of to give an overview of our setup or of our architecture, so the backend, the core backend itself is a GraphQL backend, right? And the core database itself, it's a MongoDB database, right? But that database has nothing to do with AI. It's just like normal storage, like accounts. You create your AI characters, or conversations, all those kinds of things to store it. By the way, some of those storage, we are going to take them away from us now, because in the latest updates from OpenAI, they built some of the things we've already built. So they've built the ability to create AI characters. They call theirs assistants. We call ours characters. They built the ability to give those characters quick instruction, right? We also have a tab on our own called Instruct tab. They built the ability to give the character a knowledge base. We also have a knowledge base in our own. So basically, it just shows that, okay, we are going in the right direction. They built part of the knowledge base capability is the ability to upload files, right? And then the AI will be able to learn from those files, which we also have on our own. So now we're probably going to remove those because it reduces the amount of code we have to write. It reduces the possibility of introducing bugs to our system, and just rely on them. Because at the end of the day, what we are selling is not really the AI character. What we are selling in Proteus is the integration of those AI characters into your businesses, right? So we are building like a thin wrapper around what companies like OpenAI in the future, we're going to support others like Google, Cohere, and Co. And then we're going to help you integrate it to your business. right? So we do have for 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 the AI parts, or let me just finish with the for the non-AI parts, your normal GraphQL,
Yeah.
your normal Mongo and stuff like that. For the AI parts, the most important tool we are using is a database called Pinecone. It's not a very popular database, at least for now, but I think it's going to increase in popularity as people enter into the AI space. We use Pinecone for what we call semantic search. So you don't want to search based on keywords. So for instance, you've given the AI a book to read, right? And then a user asks a question based on that book. You don't want to answer the user by identifying keywords in what the user has typed and then looking for those keywords in the book. No.
Yeah.
Semantic search is you are looking for meaning. You are trying to understand the intent. What is the user trying to do, or what are they asking? And then you are looking for what part of that book can serve that intent. So it's a semantic search. To enable us to do semantic search, we use Pinecone, right? And we use Prisma as our ORM level. It typically allows us to interact with the MongoDB database, but if they do provide like I can't remember what they call it, an adapter for Pinecone. We're also going to adapt it. But for now, we interact with Pinecone directly using the SDK that Pinecone themselves have released. We use a few other technologies for a few other things, but I think the most important thing we use with regards to AI is the Pinecone database itself, and then the OpenAI API, right? So we use models from OpenAI, and we use API from OpenAI themselves to be able to do things like embeddings, which I know we're going to talk about later,
Yeah.
and some other AI things like the chat completion itself. So, for instance, a user has typed something, what response should the AI give them? So, we use the OpenAI API for that too. It's not, if you look at the code base, you pretty much be very familiar with it. It's not, when you hear of an AI project, you probably think it's going to look drastically different from what you're used to. But when you look at it, okay, yeah, I can actually follow this code base. I just have to learn these new tools that I haven't worked with before because they are very AI specific. That's just it, basically.
Yeah, like, but how do you guys? I know that integrating these technologies, to build complex stuffs comes with a lot of challenges. Like, what
Yeah.
are some of the most common challenges you guys have faced, and how do you manage to overcome them?
I think the most significant challenge I faced was probably a knowledge challenge. Like, because this was my first time building an LLM project, a large language model application. I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know anything going into the project. I used the project to learn. And when
Wow.
you don't know anything about a particular field, one of the most difficult thing is knowing what to choose when you find competing technologies or competing tools,
Yeah.
because you are probably not going to be able to easily go back if you find out that, oh, I chose the wrong tool, right? So you want to get that decision right from the beginning, but you don't have enough experience to know, right? So I think that was the biggest challenge for me. How did I overcome that? Well, I asked people, right? I sought people who knew better than me, and I asked their opinion, and I weighed their opinions, right? And then I also checked online, for what other people were saying. And then I brought down the lists. So, for instance, Pinecone, which I mentioned earlier, is called an embeddings database, right? Or a vector database. So when I wanted to choose what vector database to use, there were many good options, right? So that even the people that I was asking, they were recommending like a few different options. So I narrowed it down to that list. Eventually, I had to make a decision. In the absence of personal experience, I had to make decisions based on what you may call vanity metrics, like the
Mhm.
number of downloads it has and stuff, which I don't think is that, to be honest. I think it's important because if it has a number of people using it, then it means that it has a healthy community. So that when you run into issues, and you are going to run into issues, you are probably going to find the answer. You don't have to use a tool where when you run into issues as a learner of that tool, you can't even find anybody to help you because you don't have enough people using that
Yeah.
tool. So
Yeah.
that was very important, right? So seek opinions of people, find information online, and especially when you're interacting in a field that you are a newbie, you don't know a lot of things. Try to use the tool that has the healthiest community,
Yeah.
the community where you can find helpful answers readily. So yeah, that was what I did.
Yeah, that sounds like what every smart person should do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like you made mention about word embeddings a couple of times. Like how do word embeddings help AI assistants to understand what people are asking for?
Yeah. So I'm going to try not to go into like very details. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but again, there's enough information online for anybody that wants to dive deep.
Mhm.
If you want to check, you can just search embeddings in LLM or even embeddings, and then you begin to find information. But just to give us an overview, so embeddings in our case refers to what we call a vector space. Uh, what's a vector space? Basically a set of vector. What is vector? Well, if you remember maths from secondary school, most of us did vector. A vector is basically a collection of numbers where some numbers represent some form of magnitude and some numbers represent some form of direction, right? So, you can remember all those arrow diagrams like this, right? So those are vectors. The collection of those vectors is like your vector space, your embeddings, right? Those vectors can represent words or phrases, right? And so what you want to do is, how do I know that this collection of words is similar to this collection of words? Or how do I know that this paragraph answers this question? Well, one of the ways we know that this paragraph answers this question is to compare the two to see if they have similar embeddings, right?
Mhm.
So how does that work? Just to paint, and this is oversimplification. So if you really want to dive deep, you have to go online. In some of these games, especially football games, but not just football games, the skills of players are represented in this thing that looks like a web. It's kind of circular,
Yeah.
and then the person has different scores on different skills. Shooting could be 80, passing could be 90, dribbling could be another thing like
Yeah.
this. And at the end of the day, if you join all those points together, they form this uh, polygonal diagram, right? So each of those skills you can almost picture it to be an embedding because it has magnitude and it has a direction. It has a score, 90 for shooting, and then it has a direction. Okay, shooting is always here, dribbling is always here, passing is always here. So now if you have another player, right, you can now begin to tell if the two players are very similar by comparing the shape you get when you join the lines in all their skill. So that shape you get is like the embedding. Those skills are like the vectors, the specific vectors that they have. So by comparing those two shapes, you can now tell whether the players are of similar profile or not. And then there's a lot of math that helps us to do this comparison. And you can find different algorithms online, and then you choose the algorithm that you want. Different algorithms have their pros and cons. So that's basically what we're doing. We are breaking down words when you type something or when you say something, we're breaking it down into embeddings, which is basically a collection of numbers. Yeah, these numbers represent vectors in a vector space. And then using these algorithms that these systems already know how to perform. So you as a programmer don't have to worry about it, right? You tell the system, please compare this to what I have in my system. So the starting point is when you load a PDF into the system, we break the PDF into paragraphs, and then each paragraph, each chunk, we call it chunking, right? Each chunk is represented by embeddings. So now when a user asks a question, we compare the embeddings from the question that the user has typed to the embeddings from the paragraphs we got from that book, and then we find the similar ones. And then when we find the similar ones, paragraph 1, paragraph 10, paragraph 12, we fetch those paragraphs, right? We fetch the raw text of those paragraphs, then we give it to another AI system to say, using this raw text, paragraph 10, paragraph 12, paragraph whatever, answer this question that the user has typed. the AI will now answer the question using that raw text. Because you don't want to give the user those paragraphs like, hey, look at the paragraphs, go and read for yourself and try to answer your own question, right? So we give it to another AI again. The AI using the paragraph will answer the question, give us a response, and then we'll not give it to the user. So that's how we use the embeddings.
Nice. Interesting. So, like, aside from chatbots that we see a lot built with AIs, like, what are some of the other things that you feel businesses and individuals can build with large language models?
There are a lot of things, but I'll just give two, maybe for the sake of time, especially from our perspective as Proteus AI. So the first thing that we're trying to do is, number one, we're going beyond AI that chats to AI that acts. So we want to perform actions. So we want to go beyond the user types, what is blah, 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 then it gets a response. Two, the user types, can I order a meal? Can I order lunch? I am vegan. I have these specific dietary needs. And then not only is the AI able to tell you like recommendations of food, but it's able to send an order to the restaurant that has integrated with our system, right? So we're creating AI. So at the end of the foundation of everything is still this LLM, right? To understand the intent. But after we've understood the intent, we now want to go beyond that to actually performing actions, right? So we're creating AI models that can perform actions, that can call functions, for instance, that can make phone calls, send text messages, those kind of things. Call your API. If you're integrating with us, call your API. A company wants us to be calling their API to send information about the user that is chatting on our chat widget to them so that they can use it for some other analysis. The second thing that we are doing is we are building AI systems that deeply integrate with the host's environment. So if I'm using the chat widget as an example, right now our chat widget is very different from your website, although the user may not know, right? The user may think, oh, they were built by the same team at the same time. But our chat widget is running in a different process. Your website is running in a different process. They just appear in the same browser. But what we want to do is we want to now bridge that gap. We want people to be able to interact with your host application, whether it is the website or whether it is your system, from our own side. So for instance, on the chat widget, if your website supports dark mode, light mode, somebody should be able to type on our chat widgets, can you turn on dark mode? And then the website will just change to dark mode. Like that. Or if you have an app, instead of users clicking buttons, you can click on our button, our own widget button. And when we support voice, we don't yet support it, but when we support voice, you'll be able to give it a voice commands. Maybe it's a messaging app. You can then tell it, can you send a message to Sam telling him this. And then it will invoke functions in your app to perform that particular action. So those are like two things that we're looking for. We want to go beyond chat widgets, but the foundation of everything is understanding what the user is trying to do. So the foundation of everything is still those embeddings that we spoke about. We need to understand what is the user trying to do, and then go beyond that and do things like perform actions on behalf of the user.
Wow, that's quite huge. I think this is really big, and it's one of the most creative things I've had so far.
Yeah, you have to be creative because everybody is doing customer service chatbot, so you have to go further. What else can I do?
You have to think different, basically.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, data privacy has been a thing, lately. Like a lot of people are talking about data privacy and all that. Looking at Proteus AI, like, you collect a lot of data to be able to train AI assistants, especially on sensitive information like that. So how do you handle data privacy?
So for us, we don't really have an issue with data privacy because we hardly interact with your data. We interact with your data to be able to extract embeddings from them. But beyond that, we don't use your data for anything. We don't use your data to train models or anything like that. Everything happens at the embeddings level. And embeddings are just like a collection of numbers. You can't look into it and be able to tell the original data from which it came, right? So we don't really have an issue with it. The foundational models we use, like, for now we're using models from OpenAI. We rely on their own statements, their own data privacy statement, which also says that they don't train their foundational models using user-provided data. And in the future, when we choose other foundational models to use, we are also going to check for that particular clause to make sure that they are not training their models using user-provided data. So that's it. And then we also have, maybe I could share the link in some place. I don't know. We have like a data privacy page where you can read this in details and see what we do and what we don't do with your data.
Yeah, I think you can share the link with me. I'll add it on this podcast when we're sharing it online. I think we're gradually coming towards the end. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the misconceptions that people are having about data privacy as regards to AI, and what's actually the reality?
I think one quick one comes to mind. That's companies use your provided data to train their model, right? A lot of companies don't do that, at least the ones I know. So I think that's like the biggest misconception. If your data is used for your specific use case, it's not used like by the company themselves or anything like that. So don't be afraid of that when you're using tools like Proteus or even like ChatGPT itself.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you two questions in one. Maybe you could just give us a quick feedback at a go. The first one is like, does someone need a formal education to dive into AI? And if someone is actually starting out, he wants to go into AI without too much probably technical background, like what kind of path would you recommend for that person? And possibly if you have some resources, you could also share some maybe platforms or tools people could consider checking out if they're interested in diving into AI.
All right. Formal education. So what I'll say about formal education is that it gives you structure, it gives you a structured pathway to follow, and it also gives you like-minded people to interact with. So that is the advantage of it. But the reality is that not all of us will have the advantage or the opportunity to have a formal training in AI or formal education in AI. Like I myself, I don't, right? So do the best with what you have, right? If you are looking for a structured pathway, use platforms like Udemy, Coursera, Khan Academy, all these platforms. They have a lot of AI programs there. So just go on them, search for AI. Most of these platforms have the idea of a pathway, right? So they probably have AI pathway from beginner to whatever, right? Just know, you can start by knowing the end, like what do you want to achieve at the end, right? And then that will help in the decisions that you make. So yeah, that's it basically.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Franklin. You've really shared a lot with us, and I believe our viewers will learn a lot. To our viewers out there, if you have any questions or thoughts, you could just drop it on the comment section. And I'll drop some links, like the link to Franklin's projects, that's the Proteus AI, and the documentation, in case you want to learn more about the project, you could just check it out. Thanks a lot, Frank, for coming on board, and it's nice having a chat with you.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me.
And that concludes the end of another episode of the Dixre podcast. I hope you've learned a lot. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section, like the video, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. See you on the next episode.